Hey, and welcome back to Gaming for Tokens. I'm Marshall, and in this episode, we're going to be covering the last little bit of this Breakout game that I made. I'm going to be talking a little bit about some of the systems that govern the point system and kind of how I've linked all of these different parts that I've been talking to in the past 3 videos, how I've kind of linked all those together. So I kind of wanted to start by playing the game a little bit and explaining some other aspects of where what we're going to be talking about reaches into, I guess. So we have our paddle controller, right? And the thing that I haven't really talked about and I've kind of glossed over a little bit is this points counter up here at the top and this balls remaining counter down at the bottom. And you'll see that whenever I hit something, I get a certain amount of points, right? It shows up and says +1, and then there's a bunch of pluses, and then the points are going up, and I have 3 balls left. Well, one of the things to know, if I can do it looks like I'm going to be able to here. If I get up to 100 points, I get an extra ball, which is something I haven't really mentioned, but yeah. So there we go, free ball, and then 4. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about how I've managed to hook all that together and make it a kind of a cohesive game. So this episode is going to be kind of special because it's going to be the first one that I can kind of talk about how I go from making scripts to making games, which are very different things. A lot of people seem to think they're the same thing, but they're not. You can script together a bunch of stuff and then have it not be fun, not be a game, not be interesting, not be systems. This is a ridiculously long run in Breakout, by the way. This is craziness. I don't think I've ever done this before. I've only hit the ball once. Oh, here we go. Boom. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and stop while I'm ahead and start digging into some code here. So I have this object here called main. I know I just said we're going to dig into code. We are going to do that once we do our typical look over the variables and see what they do deal. So I have this object here called main, and this is my main object for my game. This is the thing that controls everything. And in a lot of games that I make, you'll see something similar to this. You'll see either a game manager or a main object or main underscore game or a main underscore manager, something like that. And it kind of controls everything. It's kind of like the director of the game. It looks at a bunch of different things and makes sure that everything is lining up correctly, that everything is happening where it needs to, and that everything is communicating where it needs to. In this particular instance, this is also doubling as my UI display manager kind of thing, which it usually doesn't. In a lot of games, you're going to have separate managers for separate systems. Each system is going to have its own managerial script. Is a way to think about it. This happens to be my managerial script for pretty much everything. The only system that it doesn't control is the paddle movement and the ball are separate systems. So it doesn't control everything, but you get what I'm saying. So yeah. The first thing I have is I have a reset key, and what that reset key does is when I'm playing, if I want to reset for debug purposes, I can just hit escape and it'll reset the game from the beginning. So that's handy to know. I also have balls per game. This is the number of balls that you start the game with. I chose to start with 4 just because it seemed like a reasonable number. I mean, you could, in theory, set it to 1 and then make them... basically, this is how many lives you're giving the player to start with. So now it's 1, and you make them earn their lives, effectively. The free ball score is how many points do you have to get a free ball. So if we reduce this to, say, 1, we're going to get a ton of them. Right, so now every time we hit, we get a free ball, and yeah, so now we're up to 9 and 10, 11, 12, and then yada yada, so on and so on. So yeah, that's the free ball score, and then there's the game over scene, which is a separate Unity scene that I have here set up, Breakout Game Over, and you'll see that these two names are the same thing because I call this scene. I can call whatever scene I want here, but it's a string that's associated with a scene in Unity that is hooked up in the build settings, which is up here. Remember, way back when I first started covering Unity, I talked about the build setting stuff. I don't know that I've talked about it since, but this is where that is, and yeah, so if the scene is in here, then you can, in theory, you can call it and load it while the game is running, which is what I'm doing right there. I have my score display, and I have my ball display, and I have my score display up. If I have enough time at the end of the video, I'll talk about this prefab here and how I'm doing that little like pop-up +1 plus whatever. I might talk about it in this video in the middle of it. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, so these things are just text meshes. Wow, that's hard to say. So the score is just a text mesh up here. It's just one, or it's just a 1. No, it's a 0. It's in front of everything. My UI is in front of all of my objects here. I made sure of that. It's -2 on the Z. Everything else is at 0. And it's just a text mesh. That's all it is. So in theory, I can put whatever I want in here. But I started off at 0 so that because your score starts off at 0, that makes sense. I also have the balls remaining and then a value. And the reason why those are separate text meshes is because I didn't want to add the prefix balls remaining string every time I update my score. I want to just be able to do a numerical add to it and do that. So this is a separate text mesh that is just moved over on the X to compensate for that. I can also now, because they're separate objects, I could use different text size, which was handy as well. So this uses font size 30, but this uses font size 40. So I can make the numbers more important, which is what matters. I could also handle the formatting a little differently. I could make this one left justified. I could make it rest justified if I wanted to, or I could go to the right, and now it looks like that. But I couldn't do that if they were the same text mesh. You might be asking why I'm using text meshes and why I'm not just using the Unity UI system. Personally, I find text meshes to be just a lot easier, and if I ever wanted to convert this game to 3D, it could look really neat to have 3D text. There's no reason why I'm not using the UI, and there's no other than what I just said. There's also no reason why I shouldn't be using it, because it's handy and cool and awesome in its own way. It also is 3D, but I just like using text meshes because they're easy. They're like drag and drop almost, and they're really, really easy to work with in code if I just want something really simple. So that's what I'm doing for this example. But feel free to explore the Unity UI system if you want. UI text is here. It involves this whole canvas system, which I haven't talked about at all yet, where you have to like make the screen and all that jazz. That's part of the reason why, is because I haven't talked about the UI system yet, and it just sounds like a mess. So instead I'm going with these little text mesh guys because they're really, really, really easy to use, and I'm pretty sure I've talked about them, but if not, I will talk about them this episode as well. So cool. Anyway, back to my main script. That's all of the different variables. If we look at the code on it, it is Breakout main is my script here, and it has all those variables we just talked about. As well as it has a couple secret variables or private variables. It has a ball object, which is the ball for the game. It has how many balls do I have left. So this is an internal counter for this value, because we don't want this to be the counter as well, like the thing that keeps track of how many we have left, as well as the thing that sets how many we start with. That is never how you want to do things. So I have a counter here for it. I have a counter for how many deaths we have, which is how many times the ball was caught by the catcher, if you remember correctly, back to I think 2 episodes ago now. We have a current score, which is an internal counter for our score value, which is going to be output to a text mesh. And then we have our old score, so we can get the difference between the scores, and I'll talk about why we're doing that in a little bit. And we have our free ball counter, which again kind of harkens back to this free ball score up here. And we might want to change the way this works, because I think I'm thinking forward to how I'm using this variable, and I believe I'm using it incorrectly. So we may change some code in this episode to make this function a little better. Okay, so on start, the thing we want to do is we want to find our ball. So I'm using GameObject.findGameObject with tag. You can do it however you want. I could have done it probably with a public variable up here and just drag and dropped it in. I didn't really care to. I don't know why. As a matter of fact, we're going to change that right now. That's easy. Public game object, ball object. So then this is going to go away. So is this. Whoa, not all that. That's not at all what I wanted to select. There we go. It's going to yell at me as soon as I leave here, but that's okay, because it'll yell at me and tell me where things are. Oh, but it won't compile the code. That's butts. I don't like that. Alright. What are you yelling about? We're just going to do this. We're going to do a find and replace. It's going to be the best thing ever. We're going to say find ball object and replace it with ball object. Sweet. That's all of. Oh crap! This is just the worst. I am the worst. All right. So recompiled. We can drag and drop our ball object in here, and now that functions a lot better for our needs. All right. So now all we have is our int values here, and we're not actually doing a get object anymore. We're just setting the balls left to how many balls we want to start the game with. So that's much easier on the start function, and we can drag and drop our ball object into here, which is much better for what we're doing. It's more efficient, I should say, because we don't ever actually do a lookup during runtime. It just has the variable on hand already. It's a little better, and it's a little more clean because say that for some reason we need to change the tag of our ball. We're not banking on hard coding that string with ball. It could be whatever we want. It could it's like if we change the string to player ball, for example, or ball 1 if we have multiple ball tags, then this it works with that situation as well as the old situation. All right. So on our update function, we're going to do a couple things here. We're going to check to see if we want to restart the level. This is a really easy way for debugging a reset function. Like I have with when I hit escape, it resets the game. This says input.get key down, get key code escape. We've seen this before, where I want to know when I hit the escape button. I want to do application load level, and I want to feed that application loaded level. So application loaded level is a integer value. It is the int associated with the scene that you had most previously loaded. So in this case, it's always going to be the scene that we started on. So it's going to be scene probably 0, I think. And then load level happens to also take an integer value as well as a string, but it takes an integer value. And we're feeding it. So we're basically saying load the level that you last loaded is what this line says here. And we're doing that when we hit the escape button. So it's pretty straightforward. The reason why I have this set up is so that if I'm trying to debug a problem, I can make it happen more than once. So I can play the game and then I can just hit escape and then it starts over and I can start playing the game again instead of having to hit the play button and then hit it again and hope that things stay the way that they stay as far as variables are concerned. This will do that for me. Okay. So the next thing we have here is our score displays. We have the score display and the balls display is what I should say. So score display is a text mesh, like I said before, and the easiest way to set a text on a text mesh is that text mesh object dot text. This is why I went the route of a text mesh instead of the UI thing. There are ways of doing this very similar to the UI system, but it requires a lot more setup than just dropping a text mesh in. So this is kind of outdated UI tech, but it works for what I want, so I'm going to use it anyway. Score display.text equals my current score toString. toString converts anything to a string, basically. Most things have a toString function. Yeah, and this is just an integer value. This is our current score. So I'm doing the same thing with the balls display. How many balls do I have left? Make that a string and give that to the balls display.text. All right. So if this old score doesn't equal the new score, then what we want to do here is spawn one of our score up display game objects. The reason why I'm doing it this way is if you get points from multiple sources, so it's kind of hard to describe. Say that you have a bonus. Say you get a bonus for killing something or like destroying a block or something like that, and just destroying the block gives you 10 points from the brick, right? But say that I want to say this is your 100th brick that you've broken, so I'm also going to give you an additional 10 points. This will actually let me display that extra 10 points. Instead of it showing 10, 10, like plus 10, it'll say plus 20. And that will, because I'm seeing if the old score and new score are different, rather than seeing every time I get points doing this object, if that makes sense at all. So it's hard for me to articulate this. It was kind of a weird idea that I had in the middle of doing this script. If the old score and current score are not the same thing, that means that I have gotten score at some point during this frame or last frame. So I want to get the difference between those scores and make that the amount that I went up. Instead of every time I get points, display how many points I got. Because you could get points from multiple sources in the same frame, and I want to combine all of those together into a single output instead of multiple outputs at the same time. Because at the same time, they might overlap and look bad. And then it'd be overwhelming, and you wouldn't be able to see what your score is and what you're getting. So this kind of handles that whole situation. There was a lot of arm flailing that went around in that you can't see, and I feel real bad that you couldn't see it, but it's hard to describe. Anyway, the get score display stuff is here. I said I would talk about that at the end if I got a chance to. I'm going to try to stick to that. But the gist is I spawn an object, and then I get my code object on it, and I set a function on it. It's pretty straightforward. The function tells it how many points to display. The object is the prefab that we defined up here with the score up display. So instantiate score up display, and we're spawning it at the position of the ball. Yeah, and that's all I'm doing is I'm telling it what score to display there. And I'll talk about that more at the end, like I said. All right, if I have time, which I don't know if I will. We're then setting our old score to be our current score. We do this at the end of every frame, at the end of every update function call on this because we have to do it somewhere, and here it makes sense. The idea is that add points will get called after this update function will, which is an assumption that I'm making that I shouldn't be making, but I am, and it seems to work fine. If it doesn't end up working fine for you, there are ways to delay update functions using Unity. I forget what that is, but it's like a script. Oh, what is that? Sorry, I'm going to look this up because script execution order. This is the thing. So if you add, okay, whoa, no, thank you. So if you add this, we can actually go down to where is it? Breakout main, and we can say that you are actually. So yeah, this is our default time function, and then after everything else, we call default main. So you can use this this manager here in Unity to revert it, to manage when scripts are called. And in theory, I should be doing this after everything else, so that everything else has a chance to give me I should be doing the script after everything else. That way, it has a chance to make sure that like things have given me points and things like that, and that it's going last. But I'm not, because it's working the way that it needs to right now, and I don't want to use that extra manager if I don't have to. So, yeah, the next function is add points. It's pretty straightforward. You feed in an int value. It adds points to it. My free ball counter also goes up, and this is where we might be doing some code edits. So if the free ball counter is greater than or equal to free ball score, then balls left goes up. Now, the problem with this is if I gain, hypothetically, if my free ball score is 100 and I gain 300 points, I'm only going to get one ball for that, and that seems unfair to me. Like, as a game player, if I get 300 points and it says you need 100 to get a ball, I'm going to be very, very, I'm going to feel cheated if I get 300 points and only get one ball, because clearly it's lying to me, right? It's not 100 points for every ball. It's over 100 points, and then you get one ball. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to say that if this, if that is greater than or equal to 1. I believe that's what I want to do. I always have to do this because I always forget. So if it's 50 divided by 100, yeah, it's 0.5. Okay, cool. Awesome. Just wanted to make sure that these were in the right order because I always forget what order they should be in for some reason. I don't know why. I chalk it up to my dyslexia that I conveniently have whenever I can't think of something properly. So what this is going to say is if the free ball counter is... if free ball counter divided by free ball score is greater than or equal to 1. So if so much of this has gone into here that it's greater than or equal to 1, so if this is equal to or greater than it is effectively what we're doing, but we're doing it in a different way, then we're going to say free balls left plus equals this. And we're going to math f dot round. Round to int is a better thing to use there. There we go. Gonna round that guy to an int. So what we're doing here is instead now, if you got 300 points, 300 divided by 100 would equal 3, which is greater than or equal to 1. So then we would come in here and we'd say balls left equals math round to int. So we're converting this division into an int, and we're saying free ball counter, which is 300 in my example, divided by 100 is 3. So we're converting that 3 into an integer value, and then we're adding that to our balls left. So we're actually going to get 3 balls instead of 1. Yeah. And I actually want to... We're going to do ball gain. And it's going to be an int. And it is going to equal this instead. And then this is going to plus equal ball gain. All right. The reason why we're doing this is because I want the this function here to be something a little different. Plus, oh. We're going to do something fancy here. Okay, so I'm going to keep explaining what it is that I'm doing here. So we're saying if our ball counter is greater than 1, so if we've exceeded the amount that we need for a ball, that's all that we care about here, then we're going to take the number of balls that we're gaining, and we're going to add that to our balls left. And then we're going to say that our free ball counter is now 0. We're zeroing that back out again, and we're going to keep going. And then which actually we shouldn't be doing that either. Man, I'm just all over the place with this, aren't I? So this actually needs to be the remainder of what we had before. So again, hypothetically, if we had a free ball counter of 100 and we got 150, then we should subtract 100 out of that instead. So our free ball counter is actually going to equal, we're going to say minus equal, and it's going to be ball gain times free ball score. Free ball score. All right, so this is going to actually subtract out how many balls we got minus the score that we took away. So we're going to take away the score. We're basically converting in increments of free ball score to a ball, and then we're removing that many from our score counter, just so that we know what's going on there. Yeah. So we're cleaning that up a little bit and making it function a little better. So to be clear, adding the amount of balls that we gain, which is calculated up here, and then we're going to take the score that we've been calculating to see how many balls we should be getting, and we're going to subtract out how many points that we converted into free balls. And then we're going to display our score here, and what we're going to do that's different here, because I'm again creating another one of these score up display objects that we created up here, but instead I'm feeding it a different thing. I'm feeding it a string that's a little different. And that's what appears down here at the bottom when it says, you got a free ball. But we're changing that now. We're saying if ball gain is greater than 1 or is equal to 1, then that else it is going to equal that. So the reason why I'm doing it this way is because I want this to say you got +1 ball if it equals 1. Otherwise, I want it to say +4 balls. I want that extra S because I want the plural in case it's more than one thing. I know that's really kind of dumb, but that's just the way that it's the way that you have to do things sometimes. There's a better way to do this, which is that we should append this S exclamation point to the end of it if you got more than one, and then if you didn't, we would just leave it at ball. That would be the better way to go about it, but because I can do it this way, I might as well, and it'll look a little better because of it. The last thing that I'm keeping track of is ball death. Ball death is called by my catcher function, which I'm going to be going over all the different little code pieces here in just a second to explain how this latches into other objects and how it controls everything. But ball death here just increases my ball's death counter. I decrease the amount of balls that I have left, and I say if balls left is less than or equal to 0, I'm going to load my game over scene. That's what this does here. I'm keeping track of my deaths in case I want to do something with it, but currently I don't do anything with it. I just increment it, and I keep track of how many times I've died, but I don't actually ever do anything with that information. So that's a thing to know, that I'm building this in such a way that I'm looking at expanding it outward instead of keeping it where it is. All right. So the first thing we want to look at is the score up display. I guess I'll cover that right now. Might as well. So my score up display is nothing but a game object here that has this score up display script on it. It has a rise speed, it has a lifetime, and it has a display, which is just a text mesh inside of it that says something. Inside of this script is not a whole lot. We have the variables we just talked about. I have a timer and I have a value, and that's it. I have an update function that I'm using. I'm not using the start function at all. The update function increases my timer, sees if my timer is greater than or equal to my lifetime, and if it is, it destroys the game object. And I'm constantly increasing my position over time by my rise speed. So you'll notice that when we play the game, I should probably not have this object in here. You'll notice that when we play the game, every time we get one of these, I messed something up, I guess, in here somewhere. Equals. You should comment if you caught that, because I didn't catch it. Anyway, you'll see that when we play the game here, whenever we spawn one of those score display objects, it slowly rises up. And the reason why I do that is so that they don't overlap as much. Plus, it looks like, you got it. You got this thing. It's like the only thing it's missing is the accompanying ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching noise, right? And we can even do one better, and we can increase the rise speed of this to maybe 0.5. So now it'll go a little faster when it rises up. It won't live as long, but it'll go a little faster. So now it does that. So now the things will overlap less. And yeah. That is what that rise speed does. That would be this thing right here. So the next two functions we have are two different versions of set value. They do effectively the same thing, and as a matter of fact, this one calls this one down here. But we can set the value as an integer, and we can set the value as a string. The reason why I went this route is because if I'm doing math on the back end here, so what is it? Is it the brick? No, I believe it's the ball. Brick, instantiate, bounce effects, da 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 da. Brick. No, it's my main script, right? Add points. Yeah, it's right here. So, I don't remember where I'm actually spawning these score display objects. I forget. It might be in, I want to say it's in the ball, but I don't remember. If I hit a brick, I don't do anything. Oh, it's in my brick script. It's got to be. Man, I am just dropping the ball here. Oh, pun. I didn't even realize. Wow. Well, anyway, the reason why I'm doing this is because if I want to do any math, then I want to feed this the output of that math, which would be a integer value. So, and in most cases when I do that, I want to, I basically want to give it a number and say, this is the amount of score that I'm getting. Great. Just handle that like you would expect to. So what I'm doing here is I have a little if check for if I'm... Here we should actually else... Actually, no. We should do an else, but we should do else destroy... game object. So the idea here is we're checking to see if it's greater than 0, and if it's greater than 0, we're gonna add the prefix of plus to it. That way, you know, it's plus whatever, and then if it's negative, we're going to add the negative to it, which we probably don't need to do actually. Yeah, we don't need to do that because it's going to come with it. So yeah, we can just do this. So we're gonna put the positive like plus. You get +3 or +1, and then if it's negative, we'll just say, well, you're already negative, and it's already gonna have a little minus in front of it. So whatever, it's fine. We'll just set that as a string and call it good. And then the if it's 0, then I don't know that we want to display anything. And I'm making the call right now to say that we don't want to display anything, and we just want to get rid of this object. Which is kind of it's a really inefficient way to go about it, but this can be like a backup catch, and we should, wherever we're spawning that point up thing, that's where we should do this check to make sure that we just don't spawn the point display if we don't need to, if it's going to be 0. So what I'm doing here is I'm calling set value again inside of set value, which is really confusing if you've never seen anybody do this before, but I'm feeding it a string value instead, which is actually going to call this function. So you can have multiple functions named the same thing as long as they take different values or different amounts of values, and when it'll sort through all of the functions with the same that name that take that thing that you're feeding it, and it'll fit it there. So I'm feeding this a string, so it's going to come down to this one, and it's going to make value my new value, which is this, and it's going to make the text of the display object value. So the reason why I'm storing that value is in case I want to modify it in any way later on. Like if I want to go through and change the colors of every letter or something, or if I want to like animate it or something somehow or whatever, I don't know. Whatever crazy thing I want to do with that text, I want to be able to store that text, and I want to be able to use it later maybe. So I'm just holding on to it in case I need it. I don't need it yet, but I might. You never know. And this is the entire score, the score display object. This is everything in it. It's a really, really simple thing. It's just a little game. It's just a little object that like rises with speed and then goes away. But yeah, so that's that. And then going back to my breakout main, the next thing that this touches in like kind of a weird way is the UI objects, but I already kind of went over those. I know that this. Let's just go one by one through my scripts here. So the brick script has a reference to main, and it uses main to add points to it when it's destroyed and when it's hit, right? So this is how I'm doing that. I kind of glossed over it when I went over my brick scripts, but I'm just doing it through send message. I'm saying, hey, main, send message, add points. Here's how many points I want to add to you. So calling the function add points, this is how many. I'm doing the same thing down here, add points, but I'm adding a different amount of points. I think I mentioned it when I went over this, but this is a practical example of it. And the way that I'm getting it is find game object with tag main, and then I'm making main. I have a main thing, a main object here that's breakout main and yada yada yada. And I'm just doing that through a get component over here. This is all pretty standard stuff that I know you guys have seen in my previous videos if you've watched them, but this is the gist of how I do that. What that means though is that my main object needs to be tagged with main, which it is, and it's the only object that can use that tag. And it is, and it will be in almost every game I make. This is the easiest way for me to find and get the main object in my game, to reference it so it can reference everything else. So in this case, I'm referencing it so that I can tell it when to add points. The paddle controller also uses it, I believe. No, it references the ball. Right, the ball does though. Yeah, the ball uses main. And where does it use main? Are these the only places it uses it? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh. Yeah, it doesn't actually. 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, well, yeah, cool. So it doesn't actually use main, it just has main in case I need it to. Sure. Now this definitely uses main. The catcher volumes, the reason why is when it catches the ball, I need to make sure that it sends the ball death function off to it so that it knows that I died. Otherwise, we won't know. We won't know that I died, and that's not a good thing to do. Yeah. I'm really curious where I'm using this score up display thing. Oh, where is it? Alright. We're instantiating our launch effects. Okay, that's not where we're doing it. It's paddle hit effects. That's bounce effects. Okay, that's not where we're doing it. We're not doing it there. So we're just doing it in main whenever we get points. We're just telling it to... Okay, yeah, we're just spawning it on the game object of the ball. This is a really weird way of me doing this, but I guess it makes sense. It's every time I get points, I'm just displaying those points wherever the ball is. Weird. Well, I answered my own question, I guess. Yeah, so anyway, that's kind of an idea of what main scripts do. They're kind of this object that kind of governs everything from on high. It's kind of weird, but hopefully that makes a lot of sense. In a lot of games like this and like other, well, okay, a lot of games in general, I guess, use main scripts like this, but they usually have multiples. They'll have it's one for every system typically. They'll have one for their audio. It'll be called audio manager. They'll have one called the player manager. They'll have one for enemies, like it'll be the enemy AI manager or something like that. They'll have one that'll be say for, in this case, the bricks. I should have a bricks manager, and it'll govern how many bricks I have and when it should respawn them and when some of them died and things like that. That's all. These are all different main scripts that you'll have. Typically, you'll also have one for the UI, and then you'll have one game manager that'll look at all the other managers and tell them what to do. So it's kind of like a branching path thing. It starts off at one main thing that trickles down into multiple main things, and then from there it trickles down into the different sub little parts of system, like the mechanical parts, the gears. And that's kind of how object-oriented programming and things like this work in games, I've found at least. Could be wrong. Maybe I'm running everything entirely the way it's not supposed to be run. That's possible. I don't think so, but that's possible. And so far, this has worked for me. I've made entire games by myself using this system before, and it's worked really well. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, as always. I believe I covered everything in this. We talked about the ball, the breakout, the brick, the catcher, the game over screen. I almost completely forgot. Okay, so I have this game over screen. No, not save. I don't care. So this is really, really, really simple, and this is going to be the last thing I'm going to cover on this entire project. So the game over screen is just a screen. It doesn't have anything. It has it doesn't have a whole lot of anything. It has this GO screen for game over screen, which is a script that I have here, which I'm going to go over. It's so easy. That's it. That's all of it. It is one function. I don't even need the start function. I can get rid of that. Great. So the idea here is that it has a directional light for really no reason. It has this object here, which is my game over screen script. It's kind of acting as my main function for the time being. It's got a camera. It's got two texts, and it says press any key to try again. It has the game over, and that's it. That's everything. Any key and game over. The game over screen has a couple things. It has a time, and it has the main scene, which is a string, just like we did to call this in on our main object. Like here, breakout main, we have our game over scene. And doing the same thing here, where we have our main scene, which is just called Breakout. It's just another Unity scene down here called Breakout. That's where our game lives, right? That's our scene for our game. All I'm doing is on my update function, I am running a timer, and when that timer ticks up enough for timeout, which is our variable up here, so 10 seconds. Once it reaches 10 seconds, I'm going to do application.loadLevel, or any key down, any mouse button down, or any key down or left or right click is what I'm doing here. So I'm saying if you give me any input at all down, which means that you are hitting a button for the first time. So this isn't any key, not input on any key, because if it's any key, that means that if you're holding down D and you lose, this will flash on the screen for a single frame and then it'll flash back, which isn't what I want. I want you to release the key and hit it again. And then in that instance, it'll fire this function off. And then it just loads the main scene. And that's it. So this is just a, so for example, we have our game, and I am going to lose. Oh my god, what? Oh, I know what's going on here. Main, reball score, 100. I was never actually going to lose. Great, okay, so now when we hit, we lose. So we hit, we lose, it says game over. Press any key, I hit a key, and we come back here. So I still have the issue of, it should be like press escape to continue or something like that, but maybe I'll change it to press space. If input dot get key down key code dot space, and then we go back to our breakout game over, and then we change our any key to press space to try again, and then we can save this scene, and then we can go to our breakout, and now when I try to do this, I can hit anything. I can, I still have my mouse clicks in. I should get rid of those two. Oops. I'm messing up all over this video. This is a good video for you guys. So now when I start, I'll fail, I'll click, I'll hit keys on my keyboard. Nothing will make this this screen go away until I hit space, which fittingly enough is the same button I hit to launch my ball, so it makes sense. It's not just a bad key to choose or anything like that. It's space, which is the same. Space is effectively my start button, right? Press start to launch the ball. Press start to start the game. This might be a bad... Oh, yeah, that was bad. Anyway, this has been my Breakout series. If you have any requests, any questions, any comments, anything you want to say about the game, if you want me to expand upon the game, maybe you want me to make a high scoreboard, maybe you want me to make a randomly generated brick layout, whatever you want me to do, let me know, and I'll see what I can do. I'll see if I can do it in a video. Hopefully this was helpful to someone. I know that someone was actually requesting that I do this for them because they were trying to come up with something. They were trying to make a game like this. So hopefully they have seen this and have found it as useful as it was for me to make it, because I've never actually made a game like this before. And it was a learning experience for me as well. So, yeah, I think that's everything. And as always, really, ask questions, correct me. I know I know I've said that like 8 times now, but I mean it. A lot of people I feel like don't mean it when they're like, hey, point out when I'm wrong, but I actually do mean it. Yeah. Thanks for watching, and I guess that's it. Bye-bye.